And we should be live now. So, hello and welcome to another episode of Loose Canon. It's been forever because of I got married. I went on my honeymoon, and then I got sick on my return. So we had to delay it an additional week because it wouldn't have been a good show if I was just wheezing and coughing and sneezing. But we're back now, and we're going to be continuing our discussion on the season of Plunder because we kind of left it at the midway point, and now it's wrapped up. It's all set, and we're kind of like in that stage of looking to the future. And we also have a seasonal event going on. But how have you been? It's been a while.
I've been good. I'm just, work, 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 work. Like
Yeah,
everything is work right now. It's been kind of chaotic. I do too many things.
yeah, yeah. You do. God damn, I jinxed myself.
Yeah, now the coughing begins.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, aside from the being sick, I was right back to work as well, and it sucks going from vacation where you don't have to give a shit about anything to work. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, so we wrapped up the season. I really haven't read many of the lore books either, so I actually have like a treat for myself. I'm not a fan of this system where the lore books are like heavily reflective of the seasonal story. Like I like it when the lore books kind of stand alone, and maybe they have something to do with the story, but like um because like last season's haunted lore book, or was it the season before, there was a lore book that basically just like went hand in hand with every week, and it's just like that's nice
yeah,
for people playing the game and then reading along, but it's like
yeah.
it kind of limited what we were actually getting, and I missed what we normally get.
Right, right. They did switch it. I don't know if that's just because there's other things that they're trying to throw in the game, or because we have like
Yeah,
layered content at the moment. I don't know. Last year it was a good and bad thing because I would say when we had those lore books, it kind of gave more meat on the bone, even if it wasn't really like lore.
hmm,
But it was fun just questioning what was happening with all the headless ones.
yeah,
Um, but I
yeah.
guess
So
since we know what they are now, there's not really much to tell other than, hey, look, it's them again.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm excited for because you mentioned the headless ones. I'm excited for Tales of the Forgotten Volume
Yeah.
Two, which is the first time we've ever had that, and they actually updated Tales of the Forgotten to be Volume One. So now there's Volume One and Volume Two. So I guess we can expect it to be every year having a Volume
Yeah.
One, Volume Two, and so on. But I mean the uh I'm trying to think of the exact book, but there was a lore book. I think it might have been Voices of the Haunted, which we haven't actually covered on the show. Um, which was basically it just kind of like retold the lore every week that we would get doing the haunted activities. And then there was also of last season there was also Triage, which kind of went deeper into the character of Zavala's
Oh,
past love interest, which I mean that's
yeah.
nice. It kind of goes hand in hand with the season. It doesn't exactly um, like just be the seasons. And then this season we have Above All Else and Between Stolen Stars. And I mean I've read a few entries into I think both of these, but that was so long ago now that I don't really recall them. It's just I liked it when like going way back like to season of the Splicer, and we would have Achilles weaves a cocoon, which had like nothing to do with anything that we were doing in the game aside from the fact that it was
Yeah.
Lixney. And
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
yeah.
And take it for what it is. The Stolen Stars so far has been just great.
Oh yeah.
But we could get into that later,
Yeah.
obviously. But I just when they do seasonal content and then they throw in books that really don't follow what's happening in game during the activities that we're doing or doing the seasonal
Mhm.
whatever's. It's really kind of a nice little shock to the system, but also it can be a little bit jarring because you're in the middle of progressing forward through a story narrative that
Hmm.
you're actually playing through. And then you get this whole other book that doesn't really, it applies in some regards, but it's like a window to some other area of lore that really doesn't impact you immediately with what you're going through at the moment.
Yeah, but then it's
Um,
just like you don't tie it to the weekly because that's the other thing that like really irks me where it's like you have these longer lore books like for example or I mean not even longer so they just like space them out but so
yeah,
like Stolen Stars
Bravo.
for example it's 8 entries and so I'm pretty sure you get them once a week and so you can't finish this book until week 8 and it's like you can't finish this book but you're getting piece by piece every week because exclusively because they wanted to really like attach it to the weekly story and then above all else you get every other week which is even worse. It's like I don't want to
Yeah.
wait for the lore book. I love it when it's like I'm trying to find the one exact like an example of one exactly uh like in season in god I mean, I guess the best case scenario is Forsaken because Forsaken really like set the stage for it and they just haven't really done it like that since where you would have ghost stories and it's like how do you get ghost stories? It's like, oh, you go around and you find the ghosts that they hit all over the place.
Ghosts. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you also have Forsaken Prince, which had a very similar go and find the things. But then you also had Lawless Frontier, which is kind of like what we have now, where it's following the story. And then best of all, you had A Drifter's Gambit, which was just like, oh yeah, there's like triumphs and it's like play Gambit, and then nothing is stopping you from getting all of A Drifter's Gambit back then. Nothing was stopping you from getting it almost like day one, day two. You know, it's just doing the action required as opposed to now when they're tied to triumphs it's like do the weekly story, listen to the weekly radio, and and I prefer the system where we have more like agency of getting the book and the book allowing itself to be almost disconnected because now it's like we used to get like huge like universal stories and now it's like very connected like Season of the Dawn, the lore book Constellations, which talks about the speakers. It's like yeah, of course the speakers are connected to Saint 14 in like a loose fashion just because the speaker was so connected to Saint 14, but aside from that it had nothing to do with what the season was giving us, so you kind of got like the best of both. It's just my take on it. I don't know if people agree with me or disagree with me on that. I believe you might have muted yourself. I'm not sure if you're talking. Oh, right now. Hoping that we do
Yeah.
not have. Oh, there you go. Hello.
Just hold on. You can
Oh,
keep talking. I'm having mic troubles.
oh, okay. I mean, that was kind of the conclusion of my take on it. I mean, I'm really I do really like the lore book system. It's just I just wonder where exactly I guess it's like the resources. The resources have to go somewhere. And so like now we have all these like dialogue sequences of like the holo projector and also the radio and also this text with the person every week. And it's like, in Season of the Plunder, we started off talking to Mithrax at the star map, and then we go and we do the mission and we get some mission dialogue. Like when we go to the actual hideout, we get some exclusive mission dialogue, and then we get the relic, and then we put the relic down, and we get more dialogue there, and then we go to the Elixni corridor, and we talk to Spider, and he has his dialogue, and we go to the holo projector, and the Drifter, or Eris, or Mithrax, or Ido, or Spider, even though he's around the corner, are all talking to us there, and then we also have the radio, which is just more dialogue, and it's like, I guess Bungie's direction is just like all the resources are going into these dialogue scenes instead of lore books specifically. And that's a choice. It's not necessarily a choice I agree with though. I think I think it's better when the seasons have more lore books. Like, I mean, I guess like the expansions, because like when you go through like all the lore books, Forsaken had the biggest dump of lore books, but Season of the Forge, Season of the Drifter, you know, they had 4 and 6 respectively. Opulence had 3, and then you kind of go into these like 2 lore book a season era after Shadowkeep, and then Beyond Light had 3, except for Season of the Lost, and that one only really had 1. Um, so yeah, I don't. I guess we should just skip over because are you good?
Yeah, I hear you. It's for some reason it's disconnected from the headphones, so this is great.
Oh God. So wait, are you okay to talk or
Yeah, I'm still trying to get it to pair back to the headphones. For some reason, it just decided Discord didn't want to be connected to my headphones anymore for whatever reason. So
okay?
I will end the call and then I'll come right back in.
Okay, yeah, we can try that. So it's big me now. I'm not a fan of that, so I'm gonna go ahead and put on the macabre because this would be the lore card this week. Um, and Rhino obviously okay, he's back. Rhino would be talking about it.
Here we are.
Oh, okay. Wow, you came in really loud there. It's funny that you were coming in lower before.
Well, that might be the issue then.
Yeah. It's can't decide what mic and headphones it wants to come out from.
It's so
But
weird. It's like Discord wants to add all these settings so that if you're using a regular mic, they can enhance your user interface, whatever. But
mhm,
then the mic and the headphones and everything else you use wants to do the same, and they don't translate with each other. They don't communicate well.
yeah.
So
So do you want
hopefully,
to do you want to
hopefully,
do the lore card this week?
yeah, yeah. I'll
Okay.
start right now. Okay, so excuse me if I don't say my French correctly, but it's it's the new sniper that we got with the Festival of Lost, which is pretty cool. I mean, aesthetically, it looks awesome. Um, it looks like a Gundam gun. um, it's called macabre, but it's a play on words where they combined, the normal word macabre, which is what we all heard before, and then mech. So that operate. So I don't know if you want to say like macabre or if you want to say macabre still.
Yeah.
I guess
It's
depending on
kind
where
of
you're
in the
from, you
air.
probably already say macabre,
Yeah, and
but
then
it
other
sounds like
other
it's pronounced wrong.
yeah. On other
Yeah,
regions they call it like macabre or there's another pronunciation that's also not correct. I guess the correct pronunciation is macabre, which is what I've always
yeah,
called it.
yeah.
So
So
I'm
it's
lucky in
almost
that
like it's
sense.
almost like funny. It's almost like funny because people who probably pronounced it macabre instead of macabre, or then there's the people that say macabre. um, Yeah, who knows? Whatever. So it's macabre to me, which
Yeah.
is it's a play on words. It's between Mecca and macabre, which Mecca we're all familiar with. Playing Destiny and being nerds of fantasy culture and sci-fi, uh, which pertains to large armored robots, typically controlled by a person riding inside the robot itself. So
Hmm.
you think about anime like Gundam and other things like that. Um, and then there's macabre, which is the artistic theme of death and decay. It's the disturbing and horrifying because of involvement with or depiction of death and injury. So what's neat about this is if you read the flavor text, it says the killer robot killer. So it's almost insinuating a sense of macabre, but giving you this circular motion in wordplay because the killer robot killer implies that the gun itself or the person itself wielding the gun is the killer robot killer.
Mm,
But it could also be the killer robot killer.
yeah.
So depending on how you read into it, you could be the killer robot or you could be the killer robot killer. Anyway, it's funny because you think about like mech suits and the person driving the mech suit when they, do the damage or whatever they're doing. The person inside the mech suit is responsible. It's not really the mecha,
Hmm.
but, but everybody sees the mecha as doing the damage on the city and tearing another mech apart or whatever alien. But it's really the person inside that's doing. It's kind of like the weapon. The weapon itself isn't doing it. It's the person holding the weapon. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting that they put that in there like that. So, um, like I said, mecha are typically large armored robots. They're controlled by a person riding inside the robot itself. It refers to both scientific ideas and science fiction genres that center on giant robots and machines. Mecha as a genre has deep roots in Japanese uh, manga and anime. The heavily features or focuses on mechanical innovation using robots, cyborgs, androids, space stations. Its popularity started after World War II as the country began to experience rapid economic and technological growth, which is true. And in fact, Destiny, the game as itself, was inspired by a particular artist who did a lot of uh, early mech kind of art and concept art and just art pieces itself, like our
Hmm.
sparrows and the pikes that the fallen ride are all inspired by uh, Japanese manga. So um, macabre or macabre as an artistic theme pertains to death and decay. It means having the quality of having a grim or ghastly atmosphere. The tells of symbols of death. The term also refers to works particularly gruesome in nature. Early traces of macabre can be found in ancient Greek and Latin writers, such as the Roman writer Petronius, author of Satyricon, which was in the late first century CE, and the Numidian writer Apuleius, or I don't know how to pronounce that one, which he's the author of the Golden Ass, which is a really good story. If you ever have time to kind of just glance over or do the Cliff Notes version of the Golden Ass, it's really good. Um, a lot of writers cite it as inspiration. So anyway,
Mm.
in the Middle Ages, macabre themes in English literature would include authors like John Webster, Robert Louis Stevenson, uh, Mervyn Peake, Charles Dickinson, Roald Dahl, Thomas Hardy, Cyril Tourneur. In American literature, we know authors like Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft, and Stephen King. Over the years, the word has gained in its significance from its original usage in French, which is as la danse macabre or macabre, for the allegorical representation of the ever present and universal power of death, known in German as, I can't speak German, Totentanz, and later in English as the dance of the dead. So, the typical form which the allegorical takes is that of a series of images in which death appears. So it's either as a dancing skeleton or as a shrunken, shrouded corpse, and to people representing every age condition of life and leads them into a dance to the grave. So this symbolic, this symbol goes way back, but it is
Mm-hmm.
spread all over the world, and many cultures have this idea of macabre, which has been expanded upon, but its deep roots all come from one basic symbol, which is death personified as leading people to the great beyond, whatever you want to call it. One particular uh, art note is a Dance of the Dead in its simplest form still survives in the Marian gosh, I can't say this word, Marian at the Lubeck as a 15th century painting on the chapel walls. It shows 24 figures and couples between each dancing with death, and they're linked by groups with outstretched hands, and the whole ring is being led by death playing on a pipe. So if you can imagine this chapel in Lubeck, there's these really cool, almost like black and white photos, but they're actually drawings, paintings. And it's really realism at its heart, but it's showing people being led by death, to the great beyond. Um, so anyway, that's just one really good example. But the origin has been attributed to this overpowering consciousness of the presence of death due to at that time, which was due to the Black Death and the miseries of the Hundred-Year War. And so that's really what cemented its popularity in culture. And that's where we got all of this idea of macabre from, and why we
Mm-hmm.
use skeletons and skulls and the symbol of death, just all of that has roots within this very basic meaning, which was the dance of the dead. And I'm sure you've seen it in all kinds of cultures across the world. Many people have different ideas and representations of death, and it's always the same symbology or symbolism, which goes way back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, without getting too crazy with that, if you just kind of go down this rabbit hole, you'll see some other really cool references to the word macabre. But one particular one that I liked was there was a French scholar of romance studies, and it first occurs in the form of macabre or macabre in a poem, which was called Respite de la Mort, and it's in French. But basically, it's the death is a dance, and you're in a trance, and you end up in the great beyond. And it's just a neat little quick poem. And that kind of was the first official usage of the word macabre. And then later on, we started using it as an explanation based on its Latin origin, which was just the dance of the macabre, and that particular piece depicted, seven tortured brothers and their mother, and they were prominent figures in a dramatic dialogue, which, because of that writing, everyone spread this idea of macabre from that story. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like one domino fell, and then everybody kind of just kept expanding on the idea of macabre over the years. It just spread. And so now you see it everywhere. You see Dance of the Dead, you see uh, all of these different depictions of what is macabre. And it's typically just gory death and this overpowering feeling of, just being a part of a death and gruesome atmosphere. And it's very Halloweeny. So that's the lore chord. Macabre, mech, cob, robots, and skeleton death.
Yeah, and so Bungie's image for the mech, because you kind of talked about the killer robot
Yeah,
killer. Um, and so usually every year they have their little promo image, and this year it is actually as if the Guardians were giant mechs. They're standing looming over in the city, and the hunter specifically has the macabre sniper sniper rifle over their shoulder. How do you feel about these designs? Which ones did you vote for? Because it was either the mechs or the was it kaiju this year?
Well, it was like a better version of
It was
previous.
yeah, it was an enhanced version of the previous
Yeah,
kaiju.
yeah. It was like it was funny because it almost felt like they weighted it this time. They basically gave it was like they gave ornaments to the ornaments we already had last year.
Yeah, that's
It
funny.
was like they just added on a little bit more to the already monster theme of last year.
Yeah,
But yeah, like you said, I think it was more kaiju
yeah, because
related.
it was Godzilla, a Cyclops, and like people were calling it like a swamp thing, but it wasn't a swamp thing because there was all kind of like giant
Yeah,
monster themed.
yeah,
Um, Kind of to fight against the mechs.
yeah,
So it's like I
yeah.
wonder
It's mech
if the
versus
sniper,
kaiju, just like you think.
yeah, if the sniper is flavor text is saying the killer robot killer, it sounds like we've voted for the bad guys.
Kind of, doesn't it? I mean, if you can think about it that way,
Yeah. It's like Godzilla
it's
was going to
that
come and save the day, and instead I have this asymmetrical robot with leather pants.
it's
Man, I never want to be like, no, that looks like shit, because someone put a lot of effort in it. It doesn't look like shit. It's just not the style that I want out of it. And I
that
look
you,
at this,
yeah.
yeah, and I look at this, and the Warlock, in my opinion, has really won in terms of like the ornament. The
Oh,
Warlock
the
set
fun.
looks amazing.
Well, I see. I'm on the other side of the fence. I think the Titan one because I really like I like how hard they leaned into the Gundam aesthetic
Yeah.
for a Titan. Because I mean, if you think about a Titan, I mean, they really are just basically like this big machine guy, like
Mm-hmm.
person,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. It's just this big mech suit Titan stomping through, Destiny, and they really gave him the like Gundam treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that like you got to be careful with the artistic licensing. You can't go too far, you
Yeah.
know, too far, too close. But they did a really good job getting it almost all the way there for the type.
My
Um,
my oh, sorry.
yeah, I was going to say one particular genre of tabletop games. It's one of the only ones I really played. I played Cyberpunk, and I did a little bit of D&D way back in the day when I was much younger. But another game that I did, I only did three. I did Cyberpunk, D&D, and then this other game which is amazing. I just don't think it got popular enough. It was called Rifts, and this tabletop game Rifts, was very much like Destiny. So when Destiny was first brought to light and all of the fantasy and sci-fi that went to it, I was immediately reminded of this tabletop game called Rifts.
Hmm.
And Rifts has these mech suit guys in the game, and they're called Glitter Boys.
Okay.
And they look exactly like the Titan that has this suit, and they hold a gun that looks almost exactly like this gun. It's so cool.
No, that's funny. Um,
Yeah.
my biggest grievance with the hunter, and I feel like it's actually a pretty shared opinion, is I'm tired of cloaks with ornaments on the hood.
Well, I get it.
I'm so over it, especially for the Festival of the Lost Armor sets, because it's like you had the wolf one. Actually, no, the werewolf one didn't have an ornamented hood. It just had like a fur collar, so that one's fine. But the dino one, it's like the dinosaur head was on the hood, and it's like put these like ornamented spikes on the helmet and have it designed so like they poke out from the hood, and it's like, yeah, it's intended to be worn with this hood and it would look best with that hood. But like, if this ornamented spike on it wasn't on it, the cloak would be one of my favorite cloaks, because the design of it, how it like sits over the shoulder, how far it goes on the head, the how far it goes down the back, how it's like draped and everything. But because it's got those spikes on it, I'm just like, well, I can't wear this.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because this time around when they were doing the voting, I was like, I don't care because hunters have the same thing. Basically, it's just a mech version or kaiju version of the
Yeah.
same thing.
And then this season, like they surprised us with this Fortnite crossover, and the Hunter is
Oh yeah,
another mech. Hunter's got two mechs in one season.
we sure did. Yeah, I'm a hunter, so we sure did. We
But
really
yeah,
did. We get double mech.
they really wanted us to have mechs, and that's fine. I'm gonna support it either way because there's
I agree with
probably
you. I agree with you on the cloak thing, though. Back in
yeah.
D1, I did everything I could to run around without the cloak. I love the way the hunter looks,
Hmm.
and I love cloaks, but for the most part, I like the way the hunter looks without the cloak.
We need more options of cloakless hoods and hoodless cloaks because
Yeah,
we have like two of those right now, and it's like give us more,
I mean,
and
give Titans a cloak too, like a little one.
sure, who cares.
Mhm. Anyway,
um but yeah, so our last episode was actually a season of the Plunder episodes. This is kind of like season of the Plunder part 2 because now it's ended, and it ended in. What did you think of its ending? Let's just jump right into its ending, and then we'll kind of like go back over everything.
did it end? I
I mean,
mean,
no, and that's kind of the, the topic of discussion.
I don't like it. That's just me.
I mean, it's like it's exactly like you said because it's like it's the end of a season, but if this were a TV show, this is the end of a
Yeah,
mid-season. Where it's like,
right.
okay, we're gonna give you the cliffhanger, and we're gonna go on break for 2 months instead of like a year. And I mean, that is effectively what we're doing. We're going on break for 2 months, and then you get your next
Yeah,
season. But it's just
yeah.
the way it ended. It's not that it was bad. It's just that it's like, okay, now what?
Yeah, but now what? Like I get the ending.
Yeah.
But with a live service game, we all know like this whole game is about looking forward to what's about to come, right?
Yeah.
Like every since day one, we were always just fascinated and absorbed by what's
Mm-hmm.
next. Like
Mm-hmm.
we never really took time to just soak into the present and just be like, oh, this is the amazing part. And I think we took that for granted for a lot of things because we always look back and nostalgia and this ache for the days gone by.
Yeah.
But like we still do it to this day. Like, oh, brand new content. Like Lightfall will come out, and then 2 weeks later, we're like, what's next?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I guess we are part of the problem in that sense.
Yeah,
Like we
yeah,
but it's just like with this one, it's we're building up we're building up this mystery in the first few weeks. We have it like Mithrax clearly knows something, Drifter clearly knows something, but we don't know what it is. And then we have the bomb dropped. And it's like it's Nezarek, and it's like
yeah.
Nezarek is real. He was dead. He was in the pyramid. Elixni came in, fucking chopped him up, and we're like, oh my god, oh my god. And and then you learned about it, and then it just kind of, and then it's done. It's Aramis was her. She was foiled by Mithrax, and an amazing cinematic cutscene. The sword fight between her and Mithrax, fucking
Oh yeah,
fantastic. That was so
really
great.
good.
And he's got the swords on her neck, and she's like, do it, show Ido who you truly are. And he's like, all right, I will show her who I truly am, and this is not who I am. And he let her live, and like embarrassed, she runs away. And everyone's saying, come home, Aramis. She runs away, and it's like, okay, we've done it. We have all of Nezarek's body, apparently, which is a tiny amount to when you lay it out in front of you. It's like, how small was Nezarek? Um,
I'm
and
going to so I know I'm not going to derail the show, but I'm eventually I'm going to have to um, do one of those "What up with that" on Twitter because
Yeah.
um, as soon as we started getting this whole Nezarec is now real for real this time, not
Mm-hmm.
just a story that was possibly made up by you know like
There's so
nerds
many
like
ways
this.
they could have taken it.
Yeah, yeah. So um, I'll do it like more defined later. But I just want to put it here and just to kind of marks the spot for when I do
Mm-hmm.
it. But I can't help but wonder if it has some sort of tie-ins with the whole Ulantan story arc and how connected he is with some of the other early lore tidbits that we got that were never fully explained. And if they are going to expand on those, because just like they did with the Deep Stone Crypt, it originally was very ominous. We didn't know what the heck it was. We knew there was a tower. We didn't know
Mm-hmm.
what it was doing or where it actually was. We didn't know how you get to the tower. We just knew that it had something to do with exos. And then it all got explained in Beyond Light. Well, another whole thing that goes back to D1 that never got fully fleshed out or explained, it just got added on over the years, was the idea of Ulan Tan and um, his burial and other things that are connected to that. So I'll just leave that there. But there are things that have to do with Ulan Tan that they could definitely tie into Nezarek and his story and his or her. Was it Nezarek fully defined as a gender? I don't know. But anyway, that Nezarek story arc could totally have something to do with all of that early Ulan Tan story. And so just marking my X right here.
Yeah, so I know you're a real big fan of Ulantan, and
Yeah.
so I'm just looking them up, just on Ishtar, throwing in their name and seeing what comes up. And so, because you said their burial, so Ulantan's burial ring, a replica of the legendary burial ring for Ulantan, was a Destiny 1 bond. And it's like, okay,
Yep.
who is this guy? And then we got like a little more, a little more, a little more, and they were controversial because they believed, and this is a quote from them: "To have light, we must have dark. This is the symmetry of the universe." So in the Golden
Yep.
Age, or wait, not in the Golden Age because they were a warlock. In the City Age, they had these like philosophies of the light and the dark and everything. He the city didn't like what he was kind of pitching because it was getting Guardians to be like, it's okay to have the dark. And he has another entry. I just had it, and it basically said how when we use the light, it changes us, but in using the light, we also change the light
Yeah,
itself.
exactly. 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 So like he's in a nutshell, he's always tried to say um, you can't have one without the other. And early on in the city age, in the city development of the city, they had to draw lines because before that we had warlords and whatever other rogue light barriers were running amok.
Mm-hmm.
And so the city was the first representation of walking a path that encompassed what they thought was the most morally correct for progression of life and this sense of like humanity and
Mm-hmm.
goodness or whatever they wanted to attribute to it. And so the vanguard was created uh, 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 out of that discipline. And so the vanguard was created out of that discipline. And so you had representations for, you had mentors that would arrive. And so Ulan Tan's teachings were considered to be uh, not aligned particularly with what the vanguard was trying to do because they had to take a side, they had to
Yeah.
take a line, and what they decided to take a line on was okay, we're going to walk the line of the light and everything that has to do with the light because ultimately we feel like this is the most morally correct line. And then as things went on and other mentors started to rotate into the vanguard, the philosophy started to change and they started to allow other ideals to come in. And I think that probably beginning of the Tower and the Vanguard, you didn't have this hard um, idea of Titan, Warlock, Hunter. You had just light bearers, and
Mm-hmm.
then somewhere those philosophies started to secularize, and you had different philosophies. And so one of the the knowledge based philosophies was to walk the path of a warlock, and so the warlocks are very much on the outer edge of like playing with dangerous stuff. The hunters go find it. The warlocks play with it and dissect it until they can figure it all out. And titans are basically the wall that are punching everything to get through, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you had these different philosophies, and so that's what made each different idea. And so Ulantan, as a part of the warlocks that were out there trying to figure out what's good and what's bad, his philosophy was you can't have one without the other. And then you had like people like the the Praxics who were like, no, it's only light and fire. Conflagrate everything that doesn't have to do with light.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had people like Ikora Ray who dealt with the void a lot, and then other representations of the void. And then you had people in the middle like uh, you know our boy Osiris, who's just like obsessed with the Vex. And so you see the dangers of all of the different uh, things, ideas, and so you see the pitfalls of all of them. I mean, we have Toland. All of these warlocks succumb to their obsessions, right? And
Yeah.
so Ulan Tan is one of those stories that they never expounded upon, but we know he was ultimately buried. We know that they didn't necessarily like what he was saying, but now in today's destiny, we've accepted a lot of dark. We've accepted a lot of different philosophies now. We've dug up a lot of other things, and we've come to terms and realized that some of these other teachings by these mentors of your day, of past days, uh, may have had something to say. And so we're adopting a lot of these philosophies in their current state.
Yeah. So another thing to say is so there was a whole set called the Symmetrists because he created the faction Symmetry, his teachings specifically. I think the faction was created after his death
I think
through
so
his
too. It sounds
teachings.
like it. And it
Um,
almost sounds like, just reading it, it almost sounds a little bit like Osiris's, fanatics,
yeah,
almost just a
exactly.
little bit.
Except he
Yeah.
actually had something like worth listening to, and Osiris was just a lot of fucking pulp. Um,
Yeah.
And so like the helmet, it was an ornament set from Season of the Forge, and the helmet says, "You do not hate me, you hate the idea that I might be right." And so it's all about one day needing to use more than the light. The arms say, "One day you realize light alone is not enough," and the sorry, Symmetrist habit, the robes. I wish the light could win, as you put it, but we must accept it is not that simple. And
Yeah.
then probably the most important one, the most relevant one to bring this back to what we're talking about. Whatever came for us, it will come again. That is the nature of symmetry. And I think it was well, not last week, the second to last week of the season, I think it was revealed that Nezarek was actually, and apparently the fucking Cryptarchs knew it this whole time, which
Yeah.
really pissed me off. Ido was like going through Cryptarchy records, and apparently Nezarek is the disciple who not only led the assault during the collapse, but, was there, like, I guess the presence of Nezarek was known to be there during the collapse, and no one has said a word about it until now that we're finding his body
Right.
parts. And it's like he his ship crashed into the moon during the collapse, which I think we had a few like hints to it being like it was dated back to the collapse, but maybe it was longer than, but like probably not.
Mhm.
But now we know for certain it. He led this assault and he was defeated when the Traveler like lashed out, and his ship crashed. But Ulan
Yeah.
Khan is kind of pitching this idea that in symmetry he will return, and we have his whole body collected now, and so we defeat Aramis, and she runs off. She takes off to go wherever she wants to go, because she has growing to do. Obviously, she's not going to be a villain forever. She's eventually going to realize the error of her ways, and the importance of what Mithrax is actually doing, and trying. They needed each other to grow to be their best selves, because Mithrax was just trying to forget his past, and Aramis is
Right.
kind of like his past, and
Right.
he needed to accept that Aramis, his past, needs to exist as well, so that he can move on and truly create what the Elixni are going to become. And obviously, that means Aramis will eventually come back. Happy ending, hooray! But she said this thing about, like, to her, I think I'm not sure if she sent it to her crew or to Ido specifically, about not opening the jar no matter how desperate the situation is, because whatever was in it would take them over. So it's like, okay, so even though Nezarek is dead, he has some like power of influence that's being
Right.
contained because they're in the jars. And early on in the season, Drifter tried to pawn them off to Eris, and she's like, "I'm not fucking taking that." And now later in the season, he mentioned how he's actually worked with Eris to kind of come to a, oh, maybe we can use these for something good. And it feels like, if the next season is if this is mid-season and next season is the season finale, it's gonna be Nezarek somehow kind of recreates himself, right? Is that, would you agree with that?
I do. I just don't know what capacity they're willing to bring Nezarek into the game. I just think I think just from a story and lore perspective, as someone who plays in a much more entertaining fashion, I would assume, but we all know what happens when you assume. I would assume that it would be more beneficial to them as a marketing and a game strategy just to allow the pieces of Nezarek to kind of infect our space and continue on with that for a while, and then him never materializing as a set entity, more or less an infection that just spreads. That's that would to me seem like the more the the better way to stretch it all out, if that makes any sense. Um,
Yeah, no,
however,
I see what you mean.
however, the other side of me says just bring the dude right in front of us and let's just go at it.
Yeah, because there is a little bit of an issue of it, where Bungie doesn't want to just create villains out of nothing just to kill them. And it's like, so we
Right.
have this whole season of, or maybe not the whole season, but we have this season, well, actually, Haunted too, really. Because Haunted was Nezarek's pyramid, Plunder is Nezarek's
Yep.
body, and then
Yeah.
season 4, it would make sense if we finally do take Nezarek out and we have a dungeon. I know it's not a raid. People will probably be like, "Oh, Nezarek deserves to die in a raid or whatever," but it's like, we have a dungeon. It would make sense to me that if Nezarek comes back in some fashion, whether it's their own physical body or maybe they take over Aramis or take over Ido, and we have to fight them in the dungeon and kill them in the dungeon. I mean,
Right.
there's definitely ways that they can take it. Um, it just
Yeah.
feels like,
There's limitless possibilities, and what I like about what they're doing so far is that they're kind of like calling on us on our own, like what we thought was going to happen next. Like even with the the next subclass, which is not poison, hivey hiveness. It's its
Yeah.
own thing, which we actually learned from our encounter with the hive. Well, we didn't learn it. I'm just saying it opened up the window to be able to be receptive to however we attain the
Hmm.
ability later, because it will be a brand new one that nobody has touched. However, it's very much rooted in what we have done so far, right? So we went into the mindscape of Savathun's brain and mind, and we learned the psychic, uh, you know, kinesis, blah blah blah. We learned how to, touch and tangle ourselves with the mind strings and so anyway, in a
Yeah,
nutshell, what they've
because
done so far is really good about taking us on this path and then hitting us with, oh, you thought it was this, but here it is. Here's what it actually is. And oh, yeah, it's everything we've been doing so far. Duh, that makes the most sense.
yeah, because it feels like it's been so long. I actually kind of forgot the first season was Season of the Risen, and in that we were capturing Lucent Hive and literally going into like a psionic mindscape.
Yeah, yeah,
So there is like a lot of buildup. Maybe that's an interesting idea that you just gave me. Maybe that's kind of where the dungeon is going to take place. It's not going to take place in like a physical reality. It's going to take place in this psychic realm. And maybe that's kind of like maybe it's like introducing us to the concept of Strand. It's going to take place in the psychic realm that Nezarek has like dominion over, almost like a
yeah.
throne world. And
I mean, if we play the game and it ends up the game, or if we play Lightfall and it ends up Lightfall was to like they did in the past, like when we did uh when there was the Taken King raid, and
mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm.
whole story was you trying to chase down um Oryx and just going on that whole adventure, and then you had that final mission, which is really long, where you finally fight him, but oh, you didn't actually kill him because that's the
Mm-hmm.
raid later. And they could do that again with Nezarek, and we could
Well,
just spend all that adventure time doing that.
no, I think you have a I think you had a good idea about Nezarek not coming back in like a physical form, but instead being like an influence. And it's like if
Mhm.
Nezarek, because Strand is a dark power, and I don't like how Bungie was like, and they've done this before and have like kind of like shot themselves in the foot where they were like, we're the first people to ever use it, and it's like, no, we're fucking not. We absolutely are not. We might be the first people within our little bubble to have ever used it, but like I'm positive that someone else has used it because it's the building block of the universe. Like,
Right,
and it's like it would make sense for
right.
me or it would make sense
I
to
guess
me.
I guess it would be like they could explain it by just adding more verbs and nouns to the sentence by saying
Yeah.
that, in a paracausal way, or
Yeah.
like in a way that uh, light
We
bearers
we were the
do. That,
first to use it in this fashion. And it's like, yeah, of course we
yeah,
were.
yeah,
Which is
because it's
diff-
always
which is different to say than in Beyond Light. Like technically speaking,
yeah,
Aramis was the first to use stasis in that fashion, and then we
yeah,
picked it up and did it the
exactly,
same way.
yeah, exactly. And this whole game is technically all of the material of the universe and the
Hmm.
fabric of reality, and time even as a construct, because time has been long thought to be, well, we all know time is relevant, but it's long thought to be something that can or could be potentially accessed and manipulated. I say manipulated, but
Hmm.
be able to ride strings of time, right? Or be able to ride the void that's in between fabrics of reality, or being able to punch in and pull out of different, multiverses or whatever you want to say, parallel universes that seemingly go to the same thing. And so, all of these really cool, high minded concepts that Destiny loves to play with, we're using them in one way or another, or one fashion or another. It's just how we use it, or how our guardians as light bearers use it, has been the thing, right? So, like, even Void at one time was considered, heretical, right?
Yeah, no,
Uh,
it
but we,
was. That's
but
that's a
we,
great point.
but but we punch through the fabric of reality and grab the void, which is in between the layers of our reality and the next reality. It's that voided space in between layers that where particles seemingly pop in and out of existence simultaneously, and we're able to punch in there, grab some of that material, and bring it into our reality and use it. And then there's time. We're able to
Hmm.
basically punch into time and bring a shot from a gun, speaking of the stranger's rifle,
Yeah.
and have this little floating orb that reshoots the bullet that we just shot because it brought it back from time. So, like, all of these little high-minded concepts are very much uh, introduced to our light bearers in a way, and then we use it with our paracausal ability. And I think at
Hmm.
the fundamental basis of all of that is what is right and what is wrong. And we've learned over the years that there is no specific right or wrong. There's just what will win, right?
Hmm.
What's
Hmm.
going to win. And Ulan Tan, as a representative, has been very much on this platform of there is no winning. You can't have one without the other. It just means everything will either end or just keep going. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's not like the future war cult where they just think war is inevitable and the only way to progress forward is constantly war, which almost seems a lot like what the Vex do, where they're just trying to continue to change and transform everything. But what happens when everything's done, right?
Oh my
Now you
god,
got to go and
that's such an interesting take, actually. Holy shit.
yeah,
Because
right. What happens when you're
no,
done doing all of that?
no, sorry. How you kind of
Oh,
related the future war cult to the Vex.
yeah,
Because at the future war cult, oh my god, and the Concordat too. Okay, wait. I just have to say this. I'm derailing your derail. Um,
okay, good.
the future war cult are kind of like the Vex in this war conquest. It's like
Yeah,
futuristic, never ending, always in the future, like thinking about the future. And it's like you could relate them to the Hive in that sense, in the fact that they're always like warring, right? So the Hive are all about a conquest as well. However, the Concordat fits better for the Hive because the Concordat were going against the teachings of the speaker. They were like no, like what you're doing is wrong. You're like a false prophet and shit like that. And that's kind of
yeah,
more in the Hive's realm where they're going against the light. And then you would have Dead Orbit, who actually maybe this doesn't work out as well as I thought because when you said
yeah.
the Vex future war cult thing, I was like, in the Dead Orbit are actually exactly like the Fallen in that they're spanning the stars. You know, like not all of the Elixir are not in our galaxy. They split up. We just have a
There's a
group
lot
of
of
them.
Yeah, I will agree. There are a lot of parallelisms within this game, but also you have to remember Future War Cult was only brought in because there was a gap that needed to be filled in, and they didn't particularly like the philosophies of the Future War Cult. They just allowed them to
Well, I
bring it
know.
in because it helped advance the Vanguard forward in what we needed to do, and so they served a purpose, right?
Yeah,
And so we used them for that purpose. But like Hedea, is a part of the new monarchy, which is
yeah,
very much rooted in humanity and trying to keep things sound and structured.
and
But even their tent is like really corrupt sounding.
that's kind of where I was gonna take New Monarchy. I was kind of relating to the Cabal, but then as I thought about it more, like as I was speaking, I was like, they don't actually fit the Cabal as well as I was gonna say, because I was gonna say like they're very like strict in their values and having like the singular leader, having an emperor, like they do kind of have Cabal parallels, but they're not as well as I was originally
Yeah, yeah.
leaping
It's
to.
just all different interpretations of what we should do. And the thing that's great about all of these different ideas is every single one of them has this thing that you're like, well, crap, we can't. I mean, it's not always going to be perfect. Like nothing is perfect, and you have to
Yeah.
be okay with that. Nothing in life was ever meant to be. Not everything in life was meant to be okay.
Yeah.
But what you have to find is you have to find the thing that helps you go forward and aligns best with your values or whatever your culture is, and you have to grasp on that, and you have to kind of like go forward as best you can, even though you know that this isn't nothing will ever be perfect. You know, you just do your best, right? And
Yeah.
so it's great that they show all of these like at the surface of it, you think, wow, that's perfect. That's exactly what I want to do. And then you get into the meat of it and you're like, oh, but we're doing this thing that's not great.
Mm-hmm. Um, So I had to look it up to get the exact thing. In the Ishtar Discord, they now use forums, and so I made a forum post last week about what season 4 of the Witch Queen is going to look like, and Joey from the Discord pointed out that there's actually a line in the expeditions where Spider expresses interest in taking Rasputin's engram, and so last we
Mm.
heard from Rasputin was at the end. When was that?
What do you mean when you went radio silent and got downloaded to a USB stick?
Yeah. No, that's what I mean. When was that? Was that before Beyond Light? That was the season
That
before Beyond Light, right?
yes, it was because it was right before they took away Mars. And
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
night before the update went live, I went to Mars and I visited Rasputin and I looked around just to see if there was anything I could take some screenshots of in the hopes that the next day there would be something new there. And so I
Yeah.
was running around there and just looking at all the space, and there was some things I didn't notice before, and I kind of liked the
Yeah.
way that place looked. But yeah, I was like, "Ooh, what's this? What's
But
this? What's this?" And then all this.
yeah, so it's been a while since Rasputin has had his like focus and everything, and like obviously the big idea is that Anna is going to upload him into an exo body. There was that really old concept art of the bloody exo, and it was like that was
Yeah,
supposed to be Rasputin, and so it's kind of just the waiting game of when Rasputin is going to come back. So like a very popular theory moving forward was that season 4 was going to be about, or not maybe about, but have Rasputin come more into focus, because I suppose I'd have to look up the exact line, but apparently Neomuna,
yep,
Lightfall, Neomuna, uh,
yep, yep.
we only know about it because of Rasputin. So it's like, okay, does he just come in at the beginning of Lightfall and be like, hey, check out this place? Or like, is he built up beforehand? Like,
You
because,
know, I could definitely see it being like necessary to make. Okay, so the ultimate goal to take Rasputin, download him to a USB stick was so that nobody else could grab him
well, to
and,
save him,
and
because he was
yeah,
getting
yeah, to
deleted.
save him. Right, right. He was getting deleted, but also like you think about the implications of anybody had access to Rasputin in any capacity could ultimately unlock whatever knowledge he had about
Yeah.
our souls. So anyway, long story short, too late. If 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 we go into Lightfall and Rasputin is the key because he has that knowledge of
Mm-hmm.
the moon, because he know the ships went out looking
Yeah.
to but anyway, um, if he has that knowledge and he helps us get to Neomuna, ultimately we because you already know from the trailer and what they talked about, ultimately we knew or we know that Neomuna is under a new threat, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like, well, they have to reach out to us because they need our help.
Yeah.
So one
But
way or another,
what I mean is what I'm trying to get at is for next season, uh, it in my opinion it makes sense to introduce the final upload of Rasputin into an exo body into like a sustainable form, introduce that next season so that for Lightfall we have that in and it doesn't come out of nowhere. So I'm thinking like
yeah,
kind of back on the track of Nezarek. If Nezarek's real like play is next season, and I liked your idea about it not being Nezarek's body itself is now reformed and back to normal, and we have to kill him again. I like the idea of it maybe being like a psychic thing, and maybe also leading into strand. Like we've had this whole conversation where like I think it's like a little bit of everything. You know, like Nezarek's gonna come in with like psychic abilities. It's gonna be strand related. It's gonna be Rasputin related, and it's all gonna wrap together, and it's gonna end with the very obvious and going into Lightfall. And I think that kind of makes sense. That maybe Rasputin is put under threat from Nezarek, or maybe Rasputin is needed to fight Nezarek in some capacity.
Hmm.
You know, if it
Yeah,
maybe if it's
yeah,
not psychic,
yeah. Maybe.
because the
I,
threat that Neomuna is under is from Callus, and based on the Lightfall trailers, Callus is has not likely has not gone undergone his final transformation that we see in the Lightfall trailers where he's taking the bath and the witness is
yep,
watching.
yeah.
Um,
Well, it all makes sense story wise or play game wise because we
play
got the
game.
pieces of Nezarek. We know Nezarek went against the witness, or we assume that Nezarek went to get
What?
against the witness.
I don't like that
Just
theory.
just hear me out though. Just hear me out.
Okay.
And so Nezarek, whatever happened with Nezarek and the witness, it was counter to what the witness's agenda was
Based
at the
on
last
what?
minute. What have no basis. I'm just saying
Okay.
if
Okay.
let's just assume for a second that Nezarek's ultimate last stand went against what the witness's ultimate agenda was, whether it be by proxy
Okay.
of the traveler pushing back the darkness, or if it was just an unintended circumstance.
Okay.
Uh, that could be a good foundation for picking up his pieces because those ultimate pieces would be what would give us the ability to go against the witness and I say the witness, but actually Callus. So we're using the Nezarec pieces to fight Callus, which has attained his abilities from the witness. And so this power struggle is what we have figured out and grabbed along the way, which goes against what Callus has figured out and grabbed along the way. And so
No,
there's
I mean
ultimate struggle.
I can see using Nezarek's power against Callus. Absolutely. I think that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Personally.
So that would make a lot of sense as far as like setting up that story. Whether or not the intricacies of all of that delicate balance was really Nezarek went against the witness, or
Yeah.
Nezarek was just just a baddie that just got stopped at the last second. We
Yeah, I
assumed he was.
never sorry.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, like, a lot of people. I think a lot of people are dancing around the what's probably correct. It's just uh, in this game you can never fully say definitively this is the thing because
Yeah,
there's
that's true.
always that question mark. I mean, hell, here we are, 2022, and we still question Eris.
Yeah, no,
So whether
no, that's very
whether
true
you
though.
feel justified, whether you feel justified about that or not, we still have an environment where Destiny players still question Eris,
One
and she's
thing,
been with us the entire time.
yeah, the Nezarek turning against the witness theory. I think Matt is actually the first one that put that theory out. So I mean, sorry to go against you, buddy, but I am not a fan of that fucking theory at all. And it all stems from the same fucking shit we had in D1 where Nezarek's first introduction is called Nezarek's Sin, and everyone goes, "Oh, what's Nezarek's Sin? What did he
Yeah,
do?
yeah,
What did he do wrong?" And it's just like, yeah, it's fucking Fellwinter's lie all over again. What was Fellwinter's lie? He
yeah.
didn't have a fucking lie. It was a shotgun. Like, and if you want the joke, the lie was that it was a shotgun, but it was a sniper rifle. Like, haha,
Yeah,
whatever.
that was,
But you, people put so much weight into the names of weapons, and it's like Nezarek's whisper.
I agree.
What was his whisper? What did he
Right,
whisper
I
to
agree.
someone? What did he do? Like,
That
no, it's nothing.
see, so I'm one of those people that loves to take in. I get obsessed by the little nuances of
Yeah.
the database and the items, and I do the same thing. But what I also do, I'm really bad about staying in the middle, which I think you're really good about doing, is staying in the middle and
Yeah.
absorbing of the story as a really good thing. But I get really caught up in the minutia, and I get caught up in looking at everything in a really big aerial picture as well. So I
Hmm.
have no middle ground. It's always the extremes.
Yeah, you're
And so what
one under the other.
yeah, and so what I see is a lot of those things happening where people get caught up in the wordplay and the thing, but then a lot of that gets lost because they're not looking at the bird's eye view of what's happened in
Hmm.
the game so far,
Yeah.
right? Like a perfect example is um, we talk about all of the things around the story, but like for example, the story mission when we go to the moon and we have to run through uh, the Shrine of Oryx and that whole entire environment, all the way down the Hall of Wisdom, all the way down to the Shrine of Oryx,
Hmm.
that whole entire environment is drastically different from
Yeah.
everything else in the game. And then later, we found out that there's actually a pyramid down there. And so, what's funny to me is how people still to this day don't connect the two, and the fact that the hive, what they were learning down there as they were scratching and pulling the moon apart, could very well have been all because of the darkness and the witness and the pyramids in the first
That's
place,
so.
which we learned, which we just learned was the fact, was the case. And so it's hilarious to me that like
Yeah.
people think, oh, that whole story mission started off pierce the veil, pull back the curtain, go down in there, figure out what's going on, and how that
Yeah.
space was even used. And it has to do with Oryx, but also Osiris was calling out.
That's actually really funny that you mentioned that. I've never connected the technology differences to the pyramid. If Baxter was here, that's one of his favorite things. This although it is scrapped that so in the last mission of Taking King Regicide where you're fighting orcs, if you go over to the right there's like that like big metal contraption or whatever, and it's like that
Yeah.
doesn't fit anywhere on this dreadnought, and people were like, oh, maybe it's stolen technology or maybe it's this, and I'm not sure if this is a rumor or if it's a fact, but apparently that was like a scrapped idea that they had where Rasputin was gonna be like loaded up into a frame or something like that, like into
Oh
and
crap! That's
that's where he
funny.
was supposed to be loaded up in, and
That
like Oryx was gonna steal him or something like that. So I mean, we'll see
that
where that story goes because maybe they were like, this is getting muddy. Like, why is he stealing Rasputin? Let's do something different, and they just kind of scrapped it. But they, however the case, I never related the technology differences to
I always
the
I'm really
location of the
bad about this
pyramid.
because I'm really bad about this because I always do this. Like I said, I'm wrapped up in the tiny minutia, but
Hmm.
also I'm wrapped up in the bird's eye view. And so
Yeah,
anytime anything new shows up in the game, I correlate the two. Like I'm
yeah,
always like going back specifically to things, and I'm like,
yeah.
okay, well, what does this mean?
But
Um,
I just
but
I think it's funny though because you mentioned the Shrine of Oryx specifically, which for those who don't remember, the Shrine of Oryx was used for Oryx to, or at least was it supposed to be used for Oryx to call out to the darkness or the Hive to call out to Oryx? Because I thought it was Oryx to call out to the darkness or to the
yeah,
Witness as we
so
know them now.
so as the story would make us believe, it had to do with early on. It had to do with Oryx calling out to the hive and being able to expand
The
his
Hive or the
his.
Witness?
Yeah, but see that came by proxy. So that's what I'm saying. Like early on, we assumed that it just had to do with Oryx was the king. He was the final entity, and that
That's not
he was
how I
calling
took
out
it.
to his. Well, in early day when you had no other
Nope.
thing to really kind of correlate the two, a lot
I
of people
assumed
would
Oryx was
say,
one thing and the darkness was another.
yeah, he was a vessel of the darkness.
But that's what I mean.
So
Was the Shrine of Oryx intended for Oryx to call out to the darkness or for the Hive to call out to Oryx, like the lesser Hive?
right, right, yeah, I think that's the conundrum we fell under. We didn't
Yeah.
know specifically, um,
But
and we know.
if it were Oryx to the darkness, I find it funny that he has this whole machine and there's just a pyramid beneath it, or not necessarily beneath it, but there's a pyramid like within the location.
Yeah, see what I mean?
That was the point I was getting to.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. Yeah, totally. Well, so this is all good because this is like a stepping stone. We're kind of seeing where we've gotten thus far, and
Mm-hmm.
we're probably 3 minutes away from having to end the show. But I
Yeah,
think to
we're
encapsulate
close.
all of that, we would probably say um, Festival of the Lost as a whole has just kind of has just kind of just like completely skipped this whole episode.
Well,
But
I mean, no, we'll do the because that lore book is huge too. That might we might have
yeah,
to do.
we'll do
That's
that
a
later.
holy
But
shit.
it is good to like say we've come this far.
Yeah,
We'll be talking about Festival of the Law in more detail later because we'll actually have more details later.
yeah,
But here we are, and so I think it's good to show all of the little nuances that have gotten us this far. And so, if you were to think about Nezarek and its pieces and where we're going to head for, where we're headed to in Lightfall, what specifically do you think is the ultimate play for the witness
oh
as
man.
far as allowing us to exist thus far?
You mean like why hasn't the witnesses come and stomped us out?
Yes.
Well, I mean, it was because the witness. Well, so initially, from everything that I've understood, it's that when and this is fucking weird actually. Now that I'm gonna say this, when the traveler stopped Nezarek, it also somehow put the witness into stasis, and then at the end of D2 is when the witness kind of woke up and was like, "Oh, I'm coming for you again," or maybe
Yeah.
it was more so that when the traveler went dark, the witness like lost it and it was like, I don't know where you are. I don't know why the witness wouldn't just come back to the last place it was, but it decided
So
apparently didn't. um
So I have a theory, and I can't base it on anything, but I have a theory that um, so the witness, just like you said, the traveler woke up the pyramid ships out in
yeah, because it
whatever.
absolutely did wake up the pyramid ships,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
was it that
yeah,
they were asleep or was it that they didn't have any leads?
yeah. I wonder if, and I can't help but wonder if their ability to exist is somehow connected with whether or not the traveler is awake.
I mean, Ulan Tan would probably agree with that.
That's
um
where I'm headed.
But so the reason I would say that the witness hasn't done anything is exactly for what the witness has told us why it hasn't done anything. When it kind of woke up and then in Season of Arrivals all those fucking years ago now, it came in or it kind of like sent probes out and found us and was like, these guys are interesting. This is something the Traveler has never done before. This is something I would never think of doing. And I kind of want them on my side. And so the Witness's MO, when they want someone on their side, is like, I'm going to destroy everything that you have through like very indirect measures. Like the only example we really, or we have a couple examples, but the best example is how they got Rolk on their side, which was just like kind of taking a step back, letting
Manipulating.
everything
Yeah.
happen, and then when Rolk was like right there, the witness is like, here you go, here is what do they call it, luster, here's my luster, and then send Rolk off to finish the job. And so like everything is happening and they're letting Callus and the hive and all these things are happening, and then when we are like on death's doorstep, which would probably in the witness's mind be in Lightfall, the witness is going to step in and go, here you go, and then seal the deal on making us join in their mind.
I like it.
So I think that's gonna have to be it for the show.
Yeah.
Do you have a quick second though? Because there is one thing I wanted to say on this episode that I just forgot until a minute ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so kind of to bring things back to the dark future. In the dark future, the Drifter was more alone, and they were found dead trying to kind of convert themselves into an exo. In this scenario, though, the Drifter is friends with Eris, and he's more involved. It feels like he's less hide alone, and it feels like he's more fight along, maybe not fight alongside, but he's betting on our horse and being like, I'm gonna help them, and if it still goes to shit, I'm gonna go off and be on my own. But it's just like it's one of those interesting things,
That's a good
um,
point.
where it's like these are the changes the dark future. These are the changes that prove the dark future is not going to happen, because it's like we have helped Eris, we have helped the Drifter, we have helped Mithrax, we're gonna
Uh,
help Aramis, we're
that's a very
helping
good
all these
point.
people,
Yeah, yeah,
and
that's a good point. So we have somehow
yeah.
prevented our darkness to be
Yeah,
prepared.
I mean, so it kind of piggybacks off what you were asking me, where the witness is, I believe at least, the witness is expecting us to eventually side with them, and it feels like all of the actions we've made in the game, it's like saying we're not going to side with you.
Yeah, I
But
like it.
yeah. So our next show will be November 6th. So that's gonna be a fun one.
Yeah.
Wow. Will festivals still be going on then? I think it actually will.
Uh, yeah, I think it will. It'll be like the day before, or we'll have one more day after, and then that's
Yeah,
it.
it'll end on the 7th. I think that sounds right. And
Yeah,
then the
yeah,
season should be shortly after that as well. So we're gonna have a lot to go on next week. So join
yeah.
us on the 6th if you want to find us at Loose Cannon Show on Twitter down there, spelled the same way. And that'll be it for us. So
Bye.
bye everybody.